Hello. Today, we have with us George. And I think that George's story is just too big for one interview. So we're going to break it into two parts. And this first part, we are going to talk about George's experience with multiple sclerosis. So, George, thank you so much for joining me today.
Emily, no doubt. It's always a pleasure.
Aw. So start us at the beginning of whenever you first had symptoms of MS and what that was like, and then take us through the process, because this is a beautiful story.
It's an extensive one, too. The first symptom I truly recall, I don't know if you ever used to get the brain zaps, like that pins and needles feeling in your brain. I experienced that when I was 15 years old for the first time. I was snowboarding. I remember I just got off a chairlift and I had that like twinge and the pins and needles, and I was like, that was weird, but it came and passed. So fast forward, and I mean, like, look, the MS came after at 20. The schizophrenia thing at 24 was temporal lobe epilepsy, which I was told was a consequence of several concussions I've sustained. And then 29 was Lyme disease from the tick bite. And then 31 I was when I was diagnosed with MS. So yeah, I mean, I'll touch on this story in the mental illness one, but in 2017, when I ended up in jail and then went to rehab, the job I got after jail was at this crawl space contracting company. And then I got out into the field, like doing really filthy work. Like Mike Rowe and a camera crew would have been more than appropriate to join us. Like filthy basements, crawl spaces where I'm out of sunlight, I am out of fresh air, I am in a mask that would have passed for COVID. I wasn't in a proper respirator because those things were just too hot and heavy. So for a year, I was getting exposed to really toxic chemicals, out of sunlight, in blue light from the headlamp, which was, more radiation on my skull. And so, yeah, I quit that job in the spring of 2019 and started working for a landscaper. And when I was working for the landscaper, I noticed my balance was starting to go and my eyesight was starting to go. And I remember working at the crawl space one time, me and this guy, Devin, we were driving down to a job in South Jersey. And I remember like looking down the highway and my vision was like grayscale. It was like I wasn't seeing colors. Like that was a symptom that I should have paid attention to, but because I was still on my gabapentin habit that I acquired in the rehab in the fall a year and a half prior, I paid it no mind because I was too numb. But yeah, my balance started going that summer and I wasn't really paying attention to it. I thought I'm just getting old and decrepit and deteriorating. This is just the course of things. And then that next fall, I was working at a new job, a nice one. I felt like I was finally, after the disaster that was my existence, starting to get on some sort of right track. I was getting dental work done. I had 11 cavities filled that fall, and the final procedure was a root canal. And after that root canal, it was done on a Saturday. By that Monday, I had to call out of work because I knew, like, I could tell something was really, really wrong. I had to digress to the brain zaps thing. The reason I started with that was because this time the periodical brain zap came, but it was like the biggest one I ever had, and it was like something broke. It was like something was different about this one, because when that happened, I just didn't feel right. So after a week, I couldn't tell you the time it was on my phone. Like, that big font you have on the lock screen. Yeah, I couldn't read that. I I went to my primary doctor. When he examined me, I had such bad nystagmus. He suspected I had a brain tumor at first. It was like that bad. And plus I had to be walked into the office because, I mean, for that 2 months, it was like, I don't know if you've ever been drunk to the point where you've got the spins and you're throwing up and your gait is extremely atoxic and you can't see straight. That was me for 2 months.
Wow.
Yeah, so I went to an ENT. He prescribed a course of oral steroids, but of course that wasn't enough. I ended up getting into a neurologist a while later, and the neurologist ordered me an MRI, and that was after I'd been in this for about 7 weeks. My girlfriend at the time was driving me to every doctor appointment, walking me into every building, filling out every form for me because I couldn't use my right hand.
Yeah.
Like I'm right-handed. I could not write with my dominant hand. I couldn't see what was on any of the paperwork. So when I get the MRI done and I see it at the neurologist, well, he puts it up on the computer in front of us and sees it and just very matter-of-factly says, you need to go to the hospital immediately and get admitted for IV steroids for 5 days. So, me being me, and I had an appointment with a neuro-ophthalmologist the next day anyway, so I figured I'll just see this. Plus, I wanted to stop home and cook up a batch of cannabis butter to take with me to the hospital because I hate hospitals. So, I did that, but yeah, I did go to the hospital the next day, and it took me 2 days of the IV steroids before I could even read the writings on the wall. I remember when I was in the hospital, they brought every resident on that wing into my room on the first day to look at my nystagmus because it was that textbook.
What's a nystagmus?
All right, so when you're at a doctor and they ask you to follow their finger with
Yeah.
your eyes, it's exactly what they don't want to see when they run that test. It's when, like, end-gaze nystagmus, I think is the full term. It's when your pupils will shake when they're trying to focus.
Oh.
Yeah, and of course I couldn't walk one step without falling down. I had to constantly be assisted in that, but it's not like I was going far anyway. A little aside though, on the third night of the IV steroids, like when they hook you up to a 1,000 milligram bag of solumedrol or methylprednisolone, they do 2-to-1 saline to the steroids and give it over an hour and a half. On the third night, I had this nurse guy named Daniel who was very, very clearly spun out of his gourd on amphetamines. Like, his eyes like twitching all over the place and just completely absent-minded. You could tell he just wasn't there. But anyway, this guy hooked up my steroid IV for he didn't dilute it with the saline. So I got 1,000 milligrams of straight solumedrol in a half an hour. And what happened? I went into a fit. And this is the first time I'm speaking full sentences in the previous 2 months. And I went into a rage and kind of demanded that he not be in my room anymore because he's clearly fucked up. And pardon my French, sorry about that.
It's okay.
And he was a danger to me and possibly anyone else he was going to be working on. And I wasn't going to have it.
Yeah.
So, after that, I had to go back for another round of IV steroids maybe a few weeks later because of the spinal lesions. I had 3 spinal lesions as well as the brain lesions. And when I was in the hospital that first time, I recognized that certain foods would set off certain symptoms. So my original round of food elimination was like refined grains. I wasn't religious about excising vegetable oils yet, had I only known. But refined grains, I was trying to avoid soy, even though I was still eating soy-fed animals and stuff, unfortunately. But like no sugar. I was still drinking coffee though. But instead, because I thought I was being healthy, I was putting turmeric powder in it. But yeah, I was eating relatively keto for a year, but it was half-assed and I wasn't committed to quality. So for a year, I was pretty much a ghost. I was bedridden, I was emaciated, I was miserable. My girlfriend at the time was going through her own psychic struggles trying to kick an SSRI. So, I mean, we were kind of in the same hell at the same time. And I mean, it was a sick dynamic that worked, but it was really sad. So, yeah, so that next fall, well, I'd heard about Dr. Baker. I'd heard him previously on Joe Rogan. I'd heard Michaela Peterson's anecdote of beating RA with carnivore, and I was thinking like, well, if it's gonna work for RA, maybe it'll work for MS. And so when I decided to do it, I found a farm that had 100% grass-fed beef. I went there, I started stocking up. I picked up liver, I picked up bone marrow bones, and I picked up a bunch of meat. And for the first month, I was eating, I was doing very high fat at first, maybe like 4-to-1. I was
Wow.
eating a ton of bone marrow. I was putting fat trimmings and suet in every bone broth and every meat stock. I took the fat stuff very, very seriously because, I figured, well, that's what's going to rebuild me.
Yeah.
And it ended up being the case.
Fat is
But
key.
yeah, so after 2 weeks, and I mean, when I decided to do this, I, said I was going to do it nose to tail because I wanted to really maximize it. On day one, I cut up a bunch of raw liver and just swallowed spoonfuls of it with water. And I remember thinking immediately, like, wow, this is what nutrition feels like. But, then the realization kind of sets in that I've pretty much squandered an entire lifetime because I was malnourished. But, c'est la vie. But yeah, I felt so good on that raw liver. And the next morning, I ate the raw liver again. I threw my coffee up after that, and the liver stayed down, and that was the last time I drank coffee.
Wow.
And but yeah, after 2 weeks, I took off my prescription glasses and never wore them again. After 6 weeks, I quit a year and a half of Klonopin, which I got put back on for the vertigo for the MS. And I quit 3 years of gabapentin, which I got put on in that rehab in 2017 when I came off my original 4-year Klonopin habit.
Wow.
Yeah, and I came off them both painlessly. Like I was taking a milligram of Klonopin every day, and I just one day I just woke up and I'm like, I don't need this anymore. Well, it was more so before I was going to bed because that's when I would take it. And I fell asleep without it, and I woke up the next day like, wow, I don't feel anxious. There's no withdrawal. Because look, when I kicked Klonopin in jail that one time, I thought I was going to die. I, of course, wasn't keto adapted, and I wasn't getting any healthy food. So, I really thought I was going to die. But this time, it was like nothing. It was like a piece of figurative cake.
Wow.
And yeah, and then I quit 3 years of the gabapentin, also painless. For a week after I stopped that, I was slightly more pain sensitive, but when you're on a nerve pain med for that long, it comes with the territory. So, and after 4 months though, I corrected my dyslipidemia. Like after my first month, I did have a lipid test done. My triglycerides were like 190. My HDL was 41, I think. And then like 3 months after that, I had it done again. My LDL was, of course, high, but that's what got me well. I think it was 227. My total was like 3. The rest, as they say, is just history. I've just been going further and further down that rabbit hole, though, because, I mean, between the blue light and just, that's why I got the glasses on, and just, there's a million other things in our world that are making us sick. I just put 100% organic cotton bed sheets on my bed because I recently learned that polyester is also an endocrine disruptor. Like,
Yeah.
like everything in this world. When I started going down this rabbit hole and started reading a bunch of books, and I've read more books in the last 20 months than I have in the rest of my life combined. And
wow.
yeah, the more I've done, the more reading I've done, the more you realize, like, you're getting assaulted from all angles by chemicals, by radiation, by agrochemicals, by toxic light, by endocrine disruptors in your clothing, in your water, in your food. There's just a million different things. Like for water, I spend the money on Mountain Valley, and that's all I drink now, and I love it.
So, what about your MS symptoms as far as walking and everything? When did that resolve?
Okay, so all right, well, to go back to that first year after I got sick, I was on oral prednisone for 5 months.
Wow.
Yeah, that was horrible. Like, it kept me able to, like, kind of take care of myself. But, my screws were coming really, really loose as that was going on because I was still blue light toxic. I wasn't mindful of the quantum health stuff, the circadian biology. Like, I wasn't grounding. I wasn't watching morning sunrises or the sunsets. I wasn't doing any of that stuff. And like, I wasn't getting better, but I mean, I wasn't getting worse, but I wasn't getting better. My quality of life wasn't improving at all. At that, in that time though, because I was still open to the medical suggestions, their recommendations, their guidance, I was taking Abilify injections because, needless to say, I was extremely depressed. And especially after I took Ocrevus, like, I had never felt worse in my life. Like, once I took the MS drugs, I got worse on every level. My walking got worse, my gait got worse, my balance was worse, my vision was worse. Like, everything was worse. My spirit was at the lowest it had ever been. I mean, I used to go to sleep praying for death. It was like that. I just wanted it to end. And I did end up in a psych ward several times, like, because of the steroids and how crazy those made me, and the Abilify and how crazy that made me. Like, this was like the end of the long, long legacy of mental illness I'd had over the years. And it was hard, it was heavy, but yeah, the first year was just the worst though. Like, I wish I could visit myself in the hospital, well, earlier in my life, so I wouldn't have had to have gotten to that point, of course, but in the hospital to be like, look, this is what you're going to do, and this is what's going to work for you, and this is what's going to make you feel awesome every day. So you can be in high spirits every day, so you can form sentences, so you can hold down conversations without trailing off. I mean, when I was sick, I couldn't hold a conversation. I couldn't remember anything. My bladder control was horrific. Like, I joked with Liam from Liam Stops Tinnitus when I talked to him last year that the story of my life used to be, I came, I saw, I forgot what I was doing, and now I have to pee. And you got to know what that's like. You've been there yourself. Like, it's no way to live. It is no way to live. And I'm laughing about it now, partially because, like, I'm not there, one, and two, I ate high meat this morning, so I feel awesome at the moment. But
Good. Yeah, and I think people don't really know how miserable it is. They don't have any point of reference.
yeah, no, because when you spend your whole life, like my whole life, I was missing my genetic potential. My whole life, I wasn't living up to what I could have been. And I recognized that, but I had no idea how to mitigate it or how to abate it or how to do anything to counteract it to improve myself. And, like, if only I had known sooner. If only. Pardon me.
No, you're fine. Take your time.
But yeah, and in that first year, I did try killing myself. Like, it was after I'd gotten Ocrevus. I was maybe on it for 3 months. And I was thinking, yeah, I've probably told you this before, but my girlfriend at the time, who was like 3 months off of, which one was it? Prozac. Like 3 months cold turkey off Prozac and still suffering like hell. She suggested, like, hey, let's cop.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, well, this is my chance to escape and escape painlessly. Like, I can make this suffering end today. So I was injecting 3-bag shots at a time until I was woken up. You know what's crazy? She had me on the floor, rescue breathing, doing chest compressions, like trying to save me. But as soon as the door creaked open with the paramedics walking in, I popped right back up and was lucid again, like immediately. Like,
Wow.
all it took was that door creaking to wake me up. Yeah, it was bizarre. But after that, she kicked me out. I ended up back home because, it was just a big mess.
And sounds kind of like a toxic,
Yeah, no,
situation.
it ended up bad. And we were golden at first, but we were golden together in relative sickness together. Like, when I got healthy, was when we grew apart, and it took us like another year to finally break it off. But she wasn't happy anymore, and I wasn't happy anymore. Like, I couldn't share a meal with her. Like, we used to eat together all the time, even though it was junk food. And not being able to share my magnificent steaks with her was just, it was like a gut punch. But yeah, now it's 20 months that I'm completely symptom free. And
wow.
Yeah, and all right, so I saw I went to the MS center on
this
Monday.
Week. Yeah.
Yeah, Monday it was. I didn't see the doctor. I saw the nurse practitioner there. But I finally saw my scans, like my most recent one. Because the first one I saw that got me diagnosed and got me admitted to the hospital, my brain, like, more than half of it was just white and gray matter. You could barely see my brain. The next one I had, you know how, like, when they show you an MRI, they'll do it like 3-dimensionally, so you'll see like all through the whole brain?
Yeah.
I mean, I had holes all over my brain. Like, I had to have had like 11 just black holes in my brain.
Oh my gosh.
You would have thought it belonged to a corpse. Yeah, it was brutal. And so the one I had last fall, I finally saw the images on Monday. My MS specialist never showed me the images because right then and there I would have seen for myself. I have almost completely healed all the brain damage. All the lesions are gone. There's only 3 tiny little dots where the original 3 lesions were, and they're almost completely closed.
Wow.
So, yeah, so they ordered another one for me, and I'll be like, I'm torn on I'm probably going to get it, even though MRIs are really high EMF, and I'm already getting poisoned enough by electricity as it is living in Jersey, but I really want those bragging rights.
I know. I struggle with that. That and the contrast.
Yeah, well, my last one had no contrast, thank God. And this one's also no contrast, so that's good, because I forget what the contrast dye is called, but I know they call it GAD for short, and that stuff is horrible. And there's a few prescription drug injury groups on Facebook, and
Yeah.
a lot of those people will have stories of getting injured by MRI contrast.
Yeah, a lot. And they say that like their veins are on fire now. And
That's
like it doesn't go away.
I'm so glad I have no lingering symptoms of that.
Me
Because
too.
I definitely had the contrast dye on my first few of those.
Me too.
Which, you know, must have lent itself to the fact that I was so sick and so miserable for the first year of that experience. Like, just people really, really, really need to know that if you're struggling, there is a way out. Like, there's hope. There's people that have done it. I've done it. You've done it. There's many more. Like, we are not anomalous. Like, your DNA expects certain things from your environment in terms of food and light. And if you're on top of that, you're golden.
Mm-hmm. And what I loved is that as I searched for answers, I found them.
Yes. Asking ye shall receive.
Yeah, like I didn't know. I didn't have any training in MS or any medical training at all. But as I searched for these answers with my entire fiber of my being, everything within me was like, no, I am not going down. I am not
No.
going down. And then it was just like this tiny little crumb that I was just like, oh, here's a crumb. This is a good crumb. I resonate with this crumb. I'm going to absorb this crumb. I'm going to like, and then it was just like another one. And like you said, then you go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, like the first book I read about all this stuff was The Carnivore Code by Saladino, but then I read Civilized to Death. Then I've read all 4 of Dr. Natasha's books. I've read The Body Electric. I've read Health and Light. I just finished The Invisible Rainbow by Arthur Furstenberg. I can't recommend that one enough.
I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, it's really something. I know I've read Weston Price. I've read Wilhelmer Stephenson. Like all of just everything I can get my hands on the topic of the ancestral dieting. I've read it, and I've really combined a lot of it. Like when I started doing carnivore, even though GAPS is meat stock, not bone broth, I was doing like half and half though, because I would slow cook meats in my broth, so it was like halfway between a meat stock and a bone broth. So I was essentially doing no plants GAPS, but carnivore, you know?
Yeah.
And because I really liked what Dr. Natasha had to say about healing and sealing the gut. And her specialty was mental illness first, which, you know, really resonated with me because as far back as I can remember, I always remember flames of discontent within my soul that I could never quite put out, which is, you know, why I developed such a heavy version at a pretty early age to some pretty heavy substances, and I stayed in that hole for a long time. And you know, I was convinced I would die in it, but I guess the big man upstairs had other plans for me.
That's awesome. Well, what more do you want to talk about with the MS? And then we'll transition to the
All right,
second
so
conversation.
yeah, so for anyone who's got MS and you are being like when you see a doctor, an MS specialist, there will be fear mongering. There will be, they'll cast all sorts of black magic trying to put into your head that you have to go this route. There's nothing you can do to stop the progression except take these extremely toxic drugs, which will kill your sex drive, make your hair fall out, make your teeth fall out, just destroy your skin, destroy your life, your livelihood, and your soul. When really, if we just eat like we could have before civilization existed and get right with the sunlight, nature does its job and heals us. Like, if you're struggling with any autoimmune disease, look into this space because there's a lot of us who have overcome it and we will help you. Because, like, as a former attempted 12-stepper, it's like a figurative 12th step. Like, continue to carry this message to addicts and practice these principles in all our affairs. Like, it's the same thing with disease. It can do the same thing. And yeah, we have the power to get well. And no chemicals can undo a pathological illness that's being caused by something that's not quite right with how you're living. Like, the damage can be undone, it can be reversed, it can be healed. And the next time I go to I finally got that nurse practitioner, sorry for this tangent, to order me
No, go ahead.
She ordered me a fasting insulin. I'm gonna get that done tomorrow. But I have not gotten anyone to order me a fasting serum insulin for as long as I've been on this ancestral kick. And if you listen to somebody like Ivor Cummins, that's like the biggest marker of metabolic health of anything.
Yes, I love Ivor Cummins.
Yeah, he's awesome.
That's awesome. Well, and so like you said, 20 months, you haven't had any symptoms and you are eating what?
All right, these days. All right, so today I ate pretty much an entire chicken. It was a soy-free, no antibiotics, no nonsense. You know, I got it at the farm. I'll message you a picture of the wrapper it comes in because it has all of its good information on it. But I ate like this whole chicken. I have a stock being made from what's left over with it on the stove. And I'll be drinking some of that when I get home. But yeah, I do high meat a lot. Like, I eat that stuff faster than I can keep consuming it. I go out to the Amish farms in Pennsylvania once a month. I get my raw milk eggs, my soy-free chicken and duck eggs at this one place. And my raw milk. I don't drink raw milk like crazy, but it's just so delicious. Like, and I had it, thankfully, when I had COVID last month, and it was just so wonderful. And then I go to Amos Miller's farm in Bird in Hand, where I can get my fresh beef and bison meat and fresh organ meats so I can make high meat. I can get raw cheeses there. I don't eat those a lot, but they're calorically dense and, like, they feel quite anabolic when I eat them too. But beef and bison are my mainstays. Like, when I go back out to the farm, I'm going to buy like 30 pounds of either ground beef or ground bison, and I will be eating all of it raw because, I mean, they sell their meat fresh. They butcher it. They don't age it at all. Like, they butcher it and package it and put it in the fridge. And I just go in with a crate and fill it to my heart's content and then check out and go home with a massive smile on my face. I drink colostrum whenever I can get my hands on that stuff, though. Like, I've gotten it 3 times so far this year, and that's been a massive win because that stuff is liquid gold.
Wow.
Like, yeah, and I got into kefir. I think that's how you're supposed to say that, like not kefir or kefir. I think it's kefir.
I like
I
that.
mean, yeah, that's how the Amish dude says it, so that's how I'm gonna
Well, let's go with him. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I was doing sheep kefir for a while because it was the best tasting of any kefir I'd ever tried. But so this 1 month, I didn't get the raw milk, and I only got like a gallon of sheep kefir, and I was drinking that. And then I noticed after like 3 days, my gut was bloated. Like, I mean, I looked like I was pregnant for a little bit. It was really bad. And then I watched a video that Frank Tufano had up about H. pylori and how you get it from raw sheep dairy. And I was just like, oh, well, there I go. So I started taking mastic gum to get rid of that, and that did the job. Yeah, mastic gum was great for that. But I really miss that stuff. Like, I have some goat kefir right now, just for the probiotic, and some Greek goat yogurt too, also for the probiotic. But like, it's good, but it's not as tasty as that sheep stuff.
How funny.
Yeah, the sheep milk and the sheep kefir, though, while delicious, it hurt me. But the raw Jersey cow milk I do fine with, provided it's not to excess. But yeah, I pretty much do beef, eggs, butter, chicken. I eat a lot of oysters. I eat fish roe. I do a fermented cod liver oil. I do a magnesium glycinate topically before bedtime. I do a D3 that I get from the vitamin shop. It's in MCT oil, and it has lemon and orange oil in it. I don't react to it badly, but I just had my vitamin D checked, and I'm at 100, so...
Wow, that's amazing.
I mean, I get a ton of sunlight, and even though I have a mitochondrial haplotype, like, my maternal grandmother was Syrian, and if you look up the geography of Damascus, it's over 2,000 feet above sea level, and it's at the 33rd latitude. I'm at sea level at the 40th, so it's a pretty epic mismatch. But since it's summertime right now, on sunny days, I soak up all the sunlight I possibly can, and I'll just be laying there, and I'll feel the dopamine surging through me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's just... like, who I've become this last 20 months is a version of me that never existed prior, and I wished it did. I would have had such a better run in life, but, I came back from hell, and maybe I can pull some other people, some other lost and dispossessed souls out of there with me.
Absolutely. I really feel that you will. And I am encouraged every time that I talk to you. So I know that this inspires somebody who is in the pit right now, who is absolutely miserable. So thank you, George, for your story. I appreciate it so much.
Of course. If it can help even just... if this lights that... if this is the spark that, gets the flame going for even just one person, it's all worth it.
Absolutely. I agree. All right. Thanks, George.
No doubt.